Hey guys, Technomentary here with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the iPhone 12 Pro Max going into 2022. A couple things that you need to know, and then also talk about some of the comparison that you need to know between the 12 Pro Max and the 13 Pro Max, which most likely you're going to be comparing if you're looking at the iPhone 12 Pro Max in 2022. And finally, answer the question whether the iPhone 12 Pro Max is worth it in relative comparison to the new 13 Pro Max. Now, there's a couple questions that we want to answer for you guys and talk about the performance, the battery life, camera, and everything that you need to know and how you can determine if this phone is right for you. Now, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, if you recall, came out in November of 2020, so it almost seems like it just came out, but it's almost a year and a half since it was released. And the 13 came out like Apple does with every iPhone. Now, there hasn't been a lot of changes between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and rightfully so, because Apple only does incremental changes and changes that you don't really notice when you're jumping from one generation to another. But there's a couple neat features of the iPhone 12 Pro Max. When it came out, we had 5G coming out, and we had seen a huge screen to body ratio thanks to some of the reduction in that 6.7-inch display. This display that we have is the OLED display. It's only a 60 Hz refresh rate compared to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is of course 120 Hz now. The other thing about this display, it does have a pretty good resolution. You have 2778 by 1284 pixel resolution, so phenomenal brightness of the display itself. It's not to say that the display in any means lacks any sort of compromise that you get from having a 12 Pro Max compared to iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now, the other thing about this body build is a ceramic build across the board for this front glass here, and then you have also the surgical grade stainless steel body all around. You got the flat bezel, which we've seen Apple introduce going from the 11, which was all rounded, going back to that iPhone 5 generation lineup. When you remember, these bezel was sort of flushed more to the ground, so now it seems that it's easier to hold for some people, and then for other people it seems to be harder to hold, so you might be on either side of the boat. But that was a change in design, which even the iPhone 13 kept that design, so changing the actual design of the phone. Now, in terms of other things around hardware of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, is that it does have a powerful A14 Bionic chip with 6 gigs of RAM. So now if you're really multitasking, just opening up a bunch of apps, playing heavy graphic games, it just does it without any sort of hesitation. And that's the case because the iPhone 13 Pro Max came up with a 15 Bionic chip. Now, if you really do some head-to-head comparison between the 14 and the 15th generation of chip, it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on for it, and slight incremental, although Apple does claim there's a lot of improvement on the actual chipset. On the 12 Pro Max, the A14 Bionic chip does deliver a lot of power, especially when it comes to gaming, because there is 6 gig of RAM. Now, if you're playing game, it simply does it well, and because it's a bigger side screen, it's much fun to play games that are meant to play it on the console. And then even when it comes to video streaming and things like that, you'll find it really just phenomenal just being able to do that. Other thing to note about the iPhone 12 Pro Max is that it does have a decent sized battery. Now, if you take a look at the battery, you'll notice here that it does have a 3687 mAh battery. So what does that really mean for you? Well, simply what that means is that you get about 20 hours of video playback, which is a metric that Apple does in terms of a comparison. Now, comparing that to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which again does have almost a 4000 mAh battery, which gives around 28 hours of video playback. So if you really are sensitive to having the biggest battery out there, that's probably where the iPhone 13 Pro Max makes sense. And talking about the iPhone 13 Pro Max, both of the phones does come in same sort of colors. So if you're looking at the base colors, we have the silver and we have the gold, and then there's of course the space gray edition of it. And then between these two models, the unique colors are that on the 12 Pro Max, you have the specific blue, and then going into iPhone 13, Apple introduced this Sierra blue, so a shade of blue. But then other thing you'll notice here is going to be the camera here, and that's going to be the other big difference between iPhone 12 Pro Max and the 13 Pro Max is this camera lenses. You'll notice here the cameras on the 13s are much raised, and that kind of brings us to give us some functionality such as the cinematic mode and ProRes video, which aren't available on the 12 Pro Max. So when you do really compare these two phones, it's going to be coming down to a couple comparison. First comparison, it's going to be there's no ProMotion on the iPhone 12 Pro Max compared to the 13 Pro Max. The other thing you don't have is the refresh rate. So on the 13 Pro Max, you have that 120 hertz refresh rate, where you're still stuck with 60 hertz on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And also, as we mentioned here, the other big factor in this phone are going to be your cameras. Now, not to say the iPhone 12 Pro Max doesn't have a good camera. It does have a great camera. What it does lack is this feature now for cinematic mode, which you'll notice if you go here, take a look at it, you will not have cinematic mode any longer. Now, does cinematic really matter to you? Now, when you think about cinematic mode, really someone who really would be concerned about cinematic mode is that if you really are into photography and just want to capture video that are meant for maybe some sort of film, or you're trying to create some graphic design things, that's probably where you're going to be concerned with cinematic mode. Besides that, you have your basic stuff like being able to take 4K video, your portrait mode, your panel mode, all of the good stuff that comes with it. The other thing missing on the 12 Pro Max, it's going to be that macro function. What we mean by macro is that whenever you are on your iPhone 13 Pro Max, you zoom in, you'll notice here slight shift in terms of being able to just zoom in as close to the picture as possible, where things start to get blurry on the 12 Pro Max. So, and lastly, the other comparison between these two phones around the camera is that on the zoom level, if you really want it, on the 12 Pro Max, you get 5 times the zoom versus 6 on the 13 Pro Max. Now, does that really make a difference? 5 versus 6, again, it's going to be pretty small, subtle differences, but you probably won't really care about. And lastly, we mentioned this as well, the ProRes video, which isn't supported on the 12 Pro Max, unlike the 13 Pro Max. And the one thing we want to compare between these two phones, it's going to be probably the storage size. As you know, storage size on the iPhones are built in. So that means that whatever you choose as the storage size of your phone, for example, this one is 128 gig, which is small nowadays. You can get this up to 512 gig. And now on the 13 Pro Max, you can go up to 1 terabyte. So if you're really just maxed out at that 512 gig and you want to be able to really go ahead and take as much photo videos as your heart content, that's probably where you're looking at getting the 13 Pro Max instead of getting an iPhone 12 Pro Max. But aside those similarities and differences that we mentioned between these two phones, the one reason why you might be choosing the iPhone 12 Pro Max in 2022, it's going to be probably if you're being a little bit budget friendly. Although these phones are really expensive phone, and that's the case with most newer iPhones, is that the iPhone 12 Pro Max, if you really don't care about those differences that we mentioned, like the ProMotion, the macro function, the cinematic mode, having a bigger battery, ProRes video, and of course being able to get it at 1 terabyte, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is still definitely worth it, and you can get this device right now for around $750 to $900. Although Apple doesn't sell it, you can get it in a lot of stores from your carrier, and of course on eBay and Amazon, which will leave the link in the description section so you guys can check it out if you do decide to get it, because that's probably where you're going to be saving the most instead of paying almost $1,200-$1,300 for the base model of the 13 Pro Max. The 12 Pro Max can save you somewhere between 30 to 40% saving. Again, a great device that will last for years to come. We did upgrade it to iOS 15, and when we did upgrade to iOS 15, worked phenomenal. There wasn't any issues in terms of battery or the performance itself, and no issues in terms of being able to run all the apps that we usually run, from our productivity tool to our social media tool to everyday tasks, and running a bunch of stuff at the same time. No sort of issues, and that big display definitely helps whenever you have a phone that's just being able to do everything that you need to. So if you have this phone right now, you're probably not going to be upgrading it, but if you do decide to buy between these two phones and are looking for budget friendly, that's where the iPhone 12 Pro Max comes in for you, and having a great device that will last another good 4 to 5 years, no doubt about it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I want to hear from you guys. If you guys use any of this device, what your thoughts and opinions are. Make sure to leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.